Hello again, and a very warm welcome to our little weekly podcast, Sweet Omagh Town. And by the magic of radio, I hope to talk to my co-presenter, Mr. Declan Forde. Calling Mr. Forde, are you home tonight?
Are you lonesome tonight? Well, how could I be lonesome when you're ringing me?
Sure, no, I know. You look forward to
Sure.
I'm the only company you have.
Oh, no, for goodness sake. Look. We're getting high by and strange, as the great Chris Christopherson said. Do you know that Chris Christopherson has officially retired?
As in Frank Sinatra retired?
No, yes, 2 weeks ago. He pulled the pin and he says, enough's enough, boys. And he's sailing off into the sunset there.
Oh, no.
To enjoy his many millions, no doubt.
Yes.
Come here, what is this whole crack I'm hearing about Bob Dylan, and I rarely say those two words in public, selling his back catalogue, and Neil Young? Do you think our artists of a certain age realising that perhaps their performing and recording days are over and it's time to cash in their chips?
Possibly because they are of an age, Declan, whereby people now don't pay for music. They take music, and if they like it, they'll download it or pay very little for it. People are past that now, and to download, they don't want to collect people's music at all. So I could see I could see the reasoning for that, or the rationale behind it, because they're not going to tour anymore. And if the back catalogue certainly, keeps their music alive, somebody somewhere will make something out of it, because they're not certainly getting any money. Because if you want to listen to YouTube now, you can listen to all the Bob Dylan you want, or
that's else. Right. Well, if a word of mouth, I don't like Bob Dylan. Now, this is between ourselves. Don't be telling anybody else. His voice goes to me like an electric saw, Mm-hmm. But poor musicians now, they are having a tough time.
But you just imagine somebody like Bob Dylan going on some of these talent shows, and they'll take one look at him, and he would start singing something like The Mighty Quinn, and you could just see, thank you, we'll let you know.
That's it. That's right. The red buzzer will go immediately,
Sure.
And I remember the Fury Brothers years ago. They used to do an impression of Bob Dylan as part of one of their songs. But no, I could never warm to him at all. But I mean, pity the poor musicians at the present moment.
Yes.
Pity
everybody. If you're at the moment, Declan, things are not wonderful now, to be truthful. There are people under a lot of stress now.
You do realise, I hope, that you are talking to somebody who's had a jab. I am now inoculated, vaccinated. Okay. I feel like a dog at the vet.
All right. Part 1 or part 2?
At least I'll not get fleas or the mange.
Oh, God, Declan. That's the disrespect. All the billions went into getting that, and that's your thanks, just,
No, I highly recommend it. I am singing the praises of it, and the staff in the leisure centre were brilliant.
Aye.
And it was a really difficult task, and they and the volunteers, they certainly rose to the occasion, and hats off to them. More power to them.
Definitely, Declan. I mean, it is a huge undertaking logistically, just to get people in. Just take a small town like Omagh, and you roll that out to the bigger towns and cities and countries around the world. But it has to be a worldwide thing. There's no point in inoculating everyone in the UK or Ireland or wherever it is, Declan. This has to be something that every person and human being on the planet Earth has to have access to this.
Well,
otherwise it's not going to work, really.
I suppose you must be mightily distressed when you'll not be able to take your annual fortnight in Doran.
Well, it'll cost you £100 maybe if you happen to get caught.
That's right.
Going up Ruggie or somewhere.
It's worse than throwing the money into what my mother used to call the catch pennies.
Oh, the catch pennies. Catch pennies. God, a long time since I heard that. Oh, I know.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Yes, sure. But people are getting a bit tired. I was sitting the other day in a car park, and a certain supermarket. No, man, you shouldn't be doing these things. But I was sitting looking around me, waiting on a phone call.
Oh,
and
typical.
Obviously, the car beside me, the Mr. and Mrs., let's call them maybe Peggy and Margaret or something like that. Let's say she came in.
That's grand.
And she had a face on her as if she was chewing wasps. Those at the height of a real domestic.
Very cross.
And she was holding her handbag across her knee. With the straps up, almost like if you're riding a horse, that sort of way.
Right, not a good sign.
Out she gets some strides across, and she points the finger and she shouts at him, "Bring the shopping bags and your mask." Right, and they pop. And I had to go in behind them for a couple of minutes after. Much as I tried to avoid their domestic, I seemed to get caught up in it, because every shelf they were at, she was giving it lilty, I could tell you now. But
Right.
anyway, I suppose it's a sign of the times. People are just getting a bit tired. Maybe, cabin fever, I suppose, is taking over for a lot of people. But,
Yeah.
you know,
So that's it, But, do you know what I have found myself actually stalking people in supermarkets? People that you realise there's something going on between them, and you're just dying to find out.
I want to know what started this row, and I want to
Yes,
know. I want to
how
know.
it
I want to
ends.
know how it ended, but I know what's in
You know.
between. So if you know the start, I, we can discuss it.
I was in the south of France 2 years ago, and the Chagall Museum. Marc Chagall, a great painter. Now, Marc Chagall was of the Jewish faith, born in Russia, and an American couple were in front of me, and the wife obviously wanted to see this museum, but you had to pay to get into it.
Yeah.
The husband, who obviously was anti-Semitic, once he saw the Jewish icon, the Jewish images, we're not watching, we're not staying for this rubbish. Come on! And the face flying of him, and the poor woman was nearly in tears, and he made it very clear he was not going to be anywhere near these paintings.
Okay.
It was fascinating. I enjoyed that nearly as much as the paintings.
Oh well.
A
very good friend of mine says in his marriage he can be either right or happy, but not both.
Oh, exactly. He has learned.
He says.
My aunt, my late aunt Eilish, who was a nurse in the county many years ago, Eilish Kuhn, she lived in Ballyshannon, and she invited us down for Sunday dinner once, and we were late. And Eilish didn't say anything, but I knew from the way the plates were slapped down, the cup was slapped down, the silence.
Yes, silence was deafening.
It was really. It was only at the dessert that she actually started to talk to us, and her anger was palpable, and you were sitting there afraid to speak. For goodness sake.
Families, you couldn't beat it.
I can't live with them, can't live without them, huh?
Yeah, people talk
all
about
the old cliches.
When people talk about close families, I tell you.
Are you a Waltons or a Simpson?
Definitely a Simpson. Yeah. A Walton wannabe, but certainly more of a Simpson with us.
Oh, well, so why not? Anyway, what is the agenda today?
Today is going to be a day that you and I will not be involved in the programme at all.
Right.
We shall hand the reins over to our good friend Colm Arbuckle. Call him up on Radio Foyle.
Yes, and a very fine guitar player.
Oh, a session guitar player, a man you'd have to hire.
Do you remember when he played with the late Jerry Anderson in a group called Toe Jam?
Very well. Do
I went to see them once in Marshall's in Sion.
Yes.
They were a three-piece, and Jerry played bass.
Yes.
Colm's a great producer. Do you remember he used to do a program on Radio Foyle was it My Own Choice, was it? It's like Desert Island Discs.
Yes, right.
You picked half a dozen.
My Own Collection. Was My Own Collection or something?
My Own Collection.
Yeah,
great program.
Yeah.
Great program, yeah.
Some of the guests weren't wonderful, but definitely a great program.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I was on it, of course. Yes, that's what the illusion is, right?
And
to anybody out there, that's the dig. That's the rub.
10 songs by Declan Forde. Here's one I recorded yesterday. I'm going to make out a Christmas book sometime and a little CD in it.
I believe when Cliff Richard was invited on to Desert Island Discs, the way you pick the records that you take, he picked entirely his own songs.
Seriously?
He did, yeah. Well, I think that could be a legend, but I think he was on it recently. I think he realised that there were other recording artists out there barring himself.
Format, right. But anyway, back to this. This was a programme that Colm would have done about Omagh at our request, just to come down to Omagh and do some interviews. On the way in, it's the grit and good of Omagh. So if you listen to it, it's not that long, just under an hour. You'll hear voices, sadly, some away and some, thankfully, mostly still with us. Chat about the town and the music scene and the comings and goings of Omagh. So that's a little programme today, Declan.
Excellent. I look forward to it. It'll be revisiting our recent past.
Yes, very recent past, but still the past, all the same.
Yeah. I look forward to it.
So I'll leave you with your little domestic bliss. And
yes.
Like myself, we shall discuss this off air.
I shall. Yes, and I'm just sitting looking at my arm.
What is wrong with your arm?
No, that's where I got the injection.
God, right. That's it. People say it can be sore for a day or two afterwards and things.
Not a bit.
You're.
Do you know what? Do you want me to tell you the truth?
I'll tell you what it is. See, when you're a young child, did they give you a spoonful of sugar? And you'd love this now after you take on the injection, or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, I remember those horror stories from primary school, and it was that thought of it. I tell you what it was like. I went down, and you have your basic admin, and then they put your arm left or right. I said left, and that's grand. And the nurse or the retired doctor came down, sort of knelt beside me, and then the next thing I saw him go over to the table. I said, "Are you not giving me the injection?" He says, "Do you want another one?"
Oh,
it was that painless.
My goodness.
It was. I must admit, my arm was slightly tender for 2 days, but it was as though you had lifted. Say you had held a block, and you know the way that muscles would be sore.
Yes, I know what you mean.
It was like that, and after that there were absolutely no symptoms. It was incredible. Good. I say it. We are so lucky.
Oh, we're lucky.
We are so lucky here.
And to have so many volunteers and capable people to administer these at short notice, really.
No, for goodness sake.
Logistically, it's not easy, I'm sure, just to get those numbers and getting things checked out.
Yeah, well, that's it. And it's all credit to them.
Okay.
They are doing a brilliant job.
All right, and your plans for the week, Mr. Forde? Can you tell us what you want to do?
Well, I'm doing a little drawing at the moment for the Irish Arts Centre in New York. That's these are the kind of people I deal with,
Oh, I know.
And I'm footing at that, and barring that, I'm just drawing and just writing away, keeping myself entertained. I'm at the stage now, because of the lockdown, I'm actually talking to myself a lot of the time.
Yes. Are you still Zoom teaching as well?
I'm Zooming, yes.
Oh, I would love to see.
Did you know that Zooming is a technical term? My daughter has a dog. It's about the size of a calf. It's a long-haired Scottish sheepdog, and when it was a pup and it was huge, it actually zoomed. It would go from one end of the room to the other diagonally, just running back and forward and back and forward. And I'd never seen the legs of it.
Good for him.
No, it wasn't good at all. Not if you were standing in the way.
I know, but sure.
And me and dogs.
I know, Declan. I know you're a cat man. Yeah. I know.
What kind of cat?
I fed your cat.
That's right.
Dog
food.
That
cat's dead, now.
It didn't seem to mind when I was there. I try to.
I hope you opened the tin before you gave.
I says, "I'll feed you when you bark."
Yes. Ho, ho, ho.
Here, on that happy note, Mr. Forde, have a good week, and I'll talk to you very soon.
And as my late cat would say, meow.
Okay, on that note, we'll leave you in the capable hands of Colm Arbuckle and a live outside broadcast from the way in. Take care. We'll see you very soon. Bye.
We're west of the band this week at the Way In Omagh, where we will be meeting some amazing people from all walks of life with their roots firmly planted in the town. And we're going to kick off proceedings by talking to two men who know this part of the world very well indeed. Our host for the day is Don McGurgan. And Don, thank you very much for inviting us.
You're very welcome, Colm. Welcome to Omagh.
Are you born and bred in this?
Yes, come back here. Our family could trace our roots back to Omagh to over 300 years, so we're part of the town, yes.
Well, we know you in the BBC because you're the man who actually opens the BBC Omagh studio for special guests who want to link up to programmes. And you've been telling me personally for a long time, you should come to Omagh, you'll meet some great people.
Yes.
And here we are.
Yes, you are. And you'll not be disappointed, I can assure you that, Colm. No, there's plenty of talent in this town.
Well, thank you very much for having us. And thank you also to Michael Donnelly, who has invited us to the Way In, which is where we are. Way, I should say, is not W-A-Y, but W-E-I-G-H.
That's correct, Colm, yeah.
Michael, there has to be a story behind that name.
The Way In would be a sporting term, so it is. And a good number of years ago, this was a boxing club at one time, as well as a number of other things. And we sort of played about for a few names, and we come up with The Way In, which is a boxing term as well.
But there is obviously still a sporting connection, because around the walls here there are dartboards.
We're very big into darts at the minute, so we are very big. About last weekend, we hosted the Irish Open.
And this would have been built over the top of an old Labour Hall, I believe.
That's correct, Labour Hall, yeah.
So the sporting connection lives on then?
Oh, very much so, yes.
Yeah. Now with us as well is Stephen Mc Kenna, a man who probably knows this area better than most, local historian. Stephen, thanks for joining us on the programme. I've been reliably informed that this area used to be known as Gallows Hill.
Well, it still is known as Gallows Hill. It's not anybody's actual postal address, but the name would come from the 18th century, when there was a public place of execution, it wouldn't have been a scaffold, it would have been a tree. And they hang them high because justice not only had to be done, it had to be seen to be done. The last man hanged, according to folk tradition, was in 1792, a gentleman called Tom Eccles, who was a highwayman, a stick-up artist, somewhere between here and Beira. And I don't know if he ever killed anybody, but highway robbery was a capital crime at the time. After that, when the Omagh jail opened in the early 1800s, such executions as there were held indoors.
Now, let's get away from the grisly subject of hanging people high on a tree. I have been reliably informed that you have met some very famous people, including the Beatles. I have to hear that story.
Well, we were part of an old college entertainment thing at Queen's University with Bill Coulter, a couple of others. And when you're young, you have a great can-do attitude, nothing defeats you. They were playing in the Adelphi in Dublin in 1963. So it wouldn't happen today. We got in a back gate somewhere, and then we found ourselves backstage. We asked, there was no security or any whatever. I found myself in a dressing room with a group called the Vernon Girls in some state of déshabille. So I had to say that it was really them I wanted to see, to be diplomatic about it. I did want to see in their déshabille. But they invited me or pointed me over to where the Beatles were playing cards. So we put the bait on them. I didn't know one from the other, to be honest. I think the man that did most of the talking was John Lennon. So they said they would put it to their management. They would be playing the old ABC Ritz in Belfast the next night. They were willing, but they had some gig in Sheffield on the Saturday night, and regretfully, that was the day that they didn't get to play in the university. But I suppose, looking back at it, they were interesting people to meet.
Now, you mentioned Dublin there. You also met a very famous Dublin man called Brendan Behan.
I did indeed.
What kind of a boy was he?
Well, you have to understand, this was the last year of his life, and he shouldn't have been drinking at all. They had a crowd of Trinity students hanging around them. They were like pilot fish around a great shark. But he was buying the drink. And the folks, "Oh, yeah, Northern, you come down here to take the bait out of my mouth." I said, "Aye, Brendan, am I not hearing about an Irish playwright after getting £20,000 for the rights to a play called The Queer Fella? The more slagging you give Brendan, the more he respected you." And then when the holy hour came, pubs had to close the front doors anyway for an hour in the afternoon. He proceeded up to the Bailey, where he stood us all to a feed of oysters and Guinness. Brave man that first swallowed an oyster.
Don, you're also very, very interested in local history. In fact, you once had a project where you went around recording older people in the community and getting them to tell their stories. And what a great project, because those stories would be lost completely had you not done something like that. You must have come across some great characters and stories.
That's a labour of love, and Declan and I have been doing it for over 25 years. We've been collecting just local voices of the town, people who would have remembered Ireland before partition. One lady who's wee Peg McGuigan, who worked in the post office, would have bid up the pension books for those who'd fallen at the Battle of the Somme and Morse code. And she actually remembered a young Ben Kiley coming as a young telegram boy to work in the post office as well. Those are voices that we've had that go back right before that and right up to during the First and Second World War and beyond.
Now, Omagh, of course, is a great music town, and a wee bit later on in the programme we'll be talking to some legends of the showband music scene. But right now, we have live music for you in the form of the Knotty Pines. Here they are with Gentle on My Mind.
It's knowing that your door's always open and your path is free to walk. That makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind your couch. And it's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and bonds or the ink stain that have dried upon some line. That keeps you on the back roads by the rivers of my memory, keeps you ever gentle on my mind. It's not clinging to the rocks and ivy growing on their columns there that binds me, or something that somebody said 'cause they thought we'd fit together walking. It's just knowing that the world will not be cursing or forgiven when I walk along some lonesome track to find that you're moving in the back roads by the rivers of my memory, and for hours you're just gentle on my mind. Although the wheat fields and the clotheslines and the highways and the junkyards come between us, or some other woman crying to her mother 'cause she turned and I was gone, but I still might run in silence. Tears of joy might stain my face, and the summer sun might burn me till I'm blind. But not to where I cannot see you, moving in the back roads by the rivers ever gentle on my mind. Well, I pull my cup of soup out of the gurgling, gargling cauldron in some train yard. My bearded cutlet cold cow, a dirty hat pulled low across my face. Two cupped hands round a tin can, but I pretend to hold you to my breast and find that you're waving from the back roads by the rivers of my memory, and for hours you're just gentle on my mind. Yes, you're waving from the back roads by the rivers of my memory, and for hours you're just gentle on my mind. On my mind. On my mind. On my mind.
The Knotty Pine String Band, Declan O'Kane, Seamus McGurgan, Tony Hutchinson and Aidan McGill. Declan, you specialise in bluegrass. Yes. Where did that love come from?
Oh, from many, many years ago. I was only a child when I first heard some bluegrass music, and we had records which we played in the old dance set record player on the kitchen table, and from there on.
Well, you've been going together since 1993. Was it easy enough in 93 to find fellow bluegrass enthusiasts about Omagh?
Well, we didn't have far to go, because Seamus and I, whenever we were at school, used to hide in the art room store and play Hank Williams music and whatever. So that's where we first started playing. So the four of us just got together from the first bluegrass festival, and we decided we'd try and get ourselves onto the bill for the second one, and we did.
The Bluegrass Festival then has been going a long time, and you guys have been there every year.
Nearly every year. I've been there a fair few of them.
Well, bluegrass music comes from the Appalachian Mountains of America.
Yeah.
But bluegrass music really started in this part of the world. So it came from here over to America, and you've brought it back, bringing it all back home, as you say.
Back home again. And we've argued this point with many people. A lot of tunes we would have played. The one in particular I can think of was Paddy on the Railway, an Irish tune from O'Neill's 1001 Irish Tunes, and we play a version of it as Billy in the Lowground. So it's the same tune.
Well, thank you very much, guys. We'll hear some more music from the Knotty Pines a bit later in the programme. I've heard this man's name mentioned so many times. You see, the way we get guests on our programme is usually by word of mouth. People come to you and say, do you know who you should talk to? You should talk to so-and-so. You should talk to so-and-so. And I've heard this man's name mentioned to me on numerous occasions. He sailed on the tall ships. He was a mountain explorer in America. He plays the banjo. He writes songs. He sings. And he also was a rodeo rider in America. Jim Corr, you're very welcome to the programme.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
And I'm delighted to have you. Now, today, we're only going to scrape the surface of the great stories that you have to tell. So I think we'll home in on the rodeo riding. How did you get involved in that?
I was hanging out with bad company.
Sounds good to me.
It was. But no, I guess growing up, I always wanted to be a cowboy. And then when I went to America, I got a chance with friends of mine who were competitors in rodeo, and they kind of took me under their wing, and showed me the ropes for a couple of different competitions, mainly saddle bronc riding and steer wrestling.
Well, now you're from Gorton. Had you any experience at all before you went to America?
Not at all. I'd worked with a few horses, but that was it, you know. And working with horses here is a whole lot different from working with horses in the States. But,
Well, now I've seen this on television and in films, and to me it looks like a very scary and precarious occupation to get involved in. Dangerous occupation. I mean, where do you start to train for something like that?
on the back of a horse.
But you know, okay, a bucking bronco, as they call it.
Yeah.
So you must have fallen off many, many times.
Yes. Well, I didn't fall off. I got kicked off. You know, you just get bucked off. But I've been very, very lucky that no matter how many times I got bucked off or what, I got hurt, but I didn't get seriously hurt.
No broken bones?
I didn't say that. No, badly bent.
Well, you were a competitive rider.
Yeah.
How well did you do?
Not very well, because I didn't start it until I was late. But I was Rookie of the Year in, 69? So I was doing okay then. But it's one of those things where I wanted to find out as much as I could about not just rodeo, but about working as a cowhand. So I quit the rodeo and I went to work for a cattle company in New Mexico.
So when you worked in the cattle ranch then, what did you do?
I took a rough stock and I trained them, and I worked with them. And the place that I worked on, we would take horses on a 30-day guaranteed. And after 30 days, you could put your grandmother on them. And that was the way that we worked.
You must be a serious trainer.
I'm pretty good.
You're back living now in your native Gorton.
Uh-huh.
Have you any involvement with horses there now?
Yeah, I still work with young horses that have never been handled before. And I get them ready for whatever the trainer wants to actually do with them, you know. I get them green broke.
Well, are you a horse whisperer?
You don't really talk at all. I mean, never mind whispering. You use your body language, because horses don't talk. And a horse in the wild uses body language to control everything. So you have to learn what they're saying with their body language, and you have to be able to do the same thing back to them.
Fascinating stuff. Jim, I know that we will be meeting you again on this programme because I have so much to talk to you about.
Okay.
But Jim Corr, thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome.
Now, my next guest is Elaine Waterson, and Elaine and her late husband, Day, ran the Royal Arms Hotel in the 60s, where, of course, many of the big stars of the 60s came to play. And you're very welcome to the programme, Elaine. How did you get these big stars? Now, we're talking massive people. Tom Jones, Jim Reeves, Engelbert Humperdinck. How did you go about getting these people to come to the Royal Arms, a small hotel in Omagh?
Well, why wouldn't they come to a small hotel in Omagh?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that either, but you managed it. You got many, many people.
My husband was responsible for that. He ran. I was the hotelier. I didn't really take much interest in that end of it, because when the ballroom was busy with a dance band, I had a night off rather than having a dinner dance or something like that, you know. So it gave me a bit of freedom to have a bit of peace to myself. But my husband seemed to be quite successful, and he did have a man called Charlie McBrien, who obviously acted as the person go-between and brought these people to Omagh.
Spill the beans. Some of these stars, I'm sure, were very nice, but there must have been some of them difficult as well.
Well, the one that I remember possibly best is Acherbilk. Normally, we always kept the bands in our own hotel, but if we were overbooked, we would book them into the Melville, which was quite nearby. But I remember Acherbilk arrived, and I just happened to be coming up the corridor to reception, and I could overhear the conversation he was discussing with our receptionist, and she was busy trying to explain to him that they were booked into the other hotel, that we would give them an evening meal. I sort of could hear Acherbilk saying to my receptionist, "No room, no play." To which I sort of got a bit upset, not exactly upset, but rather uptight. And I came along and I said, "Well, no play, no pay."
You've done quite right. Well,
strangely enough, towards the end of the evening, we became quite good friends again. Frank Ifield was maybe one of my most favourite people. He was an exceptionally nice man. And my son, whom I quite recently was deceased, my youngest son, told me on many occasions, as he was a small boy, that Frank Ifield actually had a wee trip round town and took my son Christopher as his guide. They visited a few places around, including an ice cream shop, and he bought my son Christopher ice cream, which I thought was particularly nice. He was very kindly, to a young child.
Well, were there any big stars from the particular era that you would have wanted to have come to Omagh, but you just couldn't get or just wouldn't come?
The Everly brothers, I remember their visitation. As I say, I always had a night off when these dance bands came. But the Everly brothers, they used to do a gig in Ballymena before coming to us, because the Ballymena folk seemed to go to bed earlier than the people in Omagh.
So they did 2 shows in the
so
one night?
So they did 2 shows in the one night. And the Everly brothers were playing in Ballymena, and then they were coming on. But for some reason or other, they were dreadfully delayed. And our ballroom was absolutely packed in anticipation of them arriving. And of course, as the time went on, I think they thought my husband was conning everybody and that they weren't going to arrive at all. But eventually they did arrive. But of course, afterwards, when they were finished their gig, and when the matter of payment came up, of course, my husband obviously was a bit upset, and he wasn't prepared to pay the amount of money that they were looking, seeing that they'd been so late. So there was a bit of an argument, and I could remember waking up in my bed at about 4 o'clock in the morning to discover that my husband wasn't in bed beside me, and I wondered what on earth was keeping him. But in actual fact, it was this ongoing row about the payment.
He wanted to dock their money because they were late.
That's right.
I have a story to tell you about the Royal Arms. You may have been there, but the famous American singer Don McLean,
Right.
he performed there, and one of the stipulations was that when he was on performing, because he's a very quiet, folky artist, that the bar would stay closed,
Yeah.
which was fine. So the bar was closed, and he was doing all his bit and singing, and everybody was very appreciative. And then he started one of his famous songs, Starry, Starry Night. And of course the crowd went, wow! The crowd went wild, started clapping and cheering and roaring because they loved the song.
Yes.
The barman thought the concert was over, flew open the shutters, and everybody who was watching the concert went to the bar. It may not have been your time, but I was assured that it did happen in the Royal Arms.
Yes.
Elaine Waterson, thank you very much for sharing your memories with us here this afternoon.
Thank you.
Declan Forde, you're no stranger to this programme. You've written a piece for us, you've sung a piece for us, and indeed you've hosted an afternoon just like today in a very special place up in the middle of Sperrins last year for a Christmas special.
That's right, up in the wilds of Brockderg, the lovely old Victorian chapel there. And it was a great session altogether.
Now, I don't know how to describe you. You're a poet, you're a writer, you're everything, but what really interests me today is that you're a man who uses dialect and is very keen on dialect, studies dialect and how different accents and dialects affect the way people are, builds up their character.
Yeah, well, even in the Omagh area, the Omagh district, within the district there are so many different nuances, there's so many different accents. For example, I live near a wee village called Mountfield. And if you traverse from Mountfield to Gortin, you go past and through the townland of Lenna. And in Lenna, in those few fields, they have the most distinct accent. They talk with a burr in their voice. And it is most peculiar. And many years ago, I was working with the late, great Paddy Grugan, musician from Carrickmore. And I said to him, Paddy, what's yourself and Kathleen doing at Easter? And Paddy was a great man for taking the gentle hand out of accents. And he pulled himself up to his 6'3" and he says, me and her's going to Paris, imitating the Lenna accent. He says, my wife and I are going to the capital city of France. And I thought, me and her, that'd be a lovely title for a story. Her, your wife, your granny, your sister, your best friend, the most valuable possession a man could have. The night I catched her in Gortin, her eyes were twinkling like stars. I catch herself on, she told me, but we stepped out, me and her. Me and her got married in Mountful of a Monday in the middle of May, with a wedding breakfast in Carman, and we went to Armagh for the day. I had nothing to give her but hardship, and me father's farm to share, but she gave me 2 sons and a daughter, with a smile, the spit of her. Betimes I never liked her, though I loved her in me own twisted way. Ach, many's the time her nyamming and her chittering drove me astray. But there was a time me and her laughed together, and we danced to an old fiddle tune. We lay snug together in our wee settled bed, and we threshed by the light of the moon. Her white hair is as soft as the daisies, and her skin's cracked like broken eggshell. Her beads are crocheted through her fingers, and there's nobody here but ourselves. For she's lying on a bolster of satin, and in her heart there's no longer a stir, and a howl I'm afeard of the morrow, for that's the end of me and her.
Declan Forde. Ivy Turner and Vena Jamison, 2 sisters. You're very welcome to the programme, ladies. Very welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
I want to talk to you about a number of things. And one is going to the dances when you were very young. We were talking to Elaine earlier on about going to the Royal Arms. You must have danced at the Royal Arms.
Oh, many, many times. And the Star Ballroom. That was a really popular place when I was young. But you had to be out before 12. And we always had to get the 11 o'clock bus home or you were in bother.
Should I have called you Cinderella Jamison then?
I was called that many a time.
Ivy, you 2 girls grew up quite close to the guest that I'll be speaking to next, a gentleman by the name of Jude Collins. Before I talk to him, what kind of a guy was he?
Well, he was okay.
Did you not
I
tell
can't
me
say very much
Did you
when
not
you're
tell
so
me you
close.
were tortured with him when he was young?
Jude would have been a wee bit younger than us, but I favoured his brother Michael. He used to push me on a swing.
And were you a
And
great
he was-
dancer in your day?
I loved the dances. And Elaine Waterson was talking there about Acrobilk. I was there that night. It was my cousin's 21st birthday. And we all had a family party first of all, and then we went to the Royal Arms to the dance. And Acrobilk sang Happy Birthday to her.
Isn't that lovely?
Oh, I was a great fan of the Royal Arms and the show bands, and that's where I met my husband. The first time I went out with him was from the Royal Arms.
But you had to be home before midnight.
Yes.
Now, I believe that you were at a do or a dance somewhere. Carrickmore, was it? Where there's a band, a famous
Yes.
band called the Temperance 7 playing.
The Gap Ballroom.
That didn't go very well, did
Not
it?
very well. I loved the Temperance 7, but the people around Omar and Carrickmore didn't think much of them. They were booed off the stage and they threw things at them, and it was unsuccessful.
There's something else I want to talk to you ladies about. You were stalwarts of the very first committee to raise money for cancer research here in Omagh, and you've been going a long time.
Yes, 30 years this November.
I must say, thanks to the Omagh people and the surrounding areas, they support us extremely well, and we're really, really grateful.
And what kind of schemes do you get up to raise this money?
Well, in June there, we had Totally Wiped Out down at the rugby club, and that was a great success. We raised over £6,000 at that.
Oh, I've seen something like this before.
Yes, they had it. They had
That's
it
very
in
energetic to me.
Yeah.
Did you take part in
Oh,
it?
certainly not. But we have a lunch every year round about February, and we have a celebrity speaking at it. And one of our celebrities one year was Jude here.
Jude Collins?
Yes.
Jude, you were brought up beside these 2 ladies, I believe.
I was across the fence. They were in a park that was, I'm not sure what year it was built in, but certainly it was like something that had come out of space and landed in the countryside. And across the fence was our farm, my father's farm. He was a cattle dealer and a farmer. So it was, they were an intriguing lot to look at. You know, they seemed so sophisticated compared to us rustics. They used to come across the fence and play with my sisters, and I would watch from a distance because they were my older sisters, and admire. I'll not tell you which one I was admiring. They seemed to give another word. But you were talking about the dances. the world of the town of Omagh was so distant to me. I felt like a hick, because we had to walk a mile in or take the bus for a penny. It cost a penny to get the bus in to school. I used to go to the pictures in Miller's Picture House, which was famous, and then later on the County Cinema. And I remember going to movies like Singing in the Rain and Love in the Afternoon, shows like that. And I loved them. They were so glamorous, these gorgeous women dancing around on stage or in the movie. But then I had to walk home, and I was only about 10 at the time. I had to walk home, and there were lights for 1/4 of the way until you got to Gartmore Park, and after that it was darkness. So here I was, 10-year-old, wandering along the road, and I was scared out of my life. And I knew I was going to be scared when I started to go to the picture, because it's such an attractive thing. It's like a moth to a flame, you know. And then at the end of it, there was an exceedingly dark stretch, which was our lane. And I remember going up at one night from the pictures and being really scared of every noise. The cattle would move in the field beside me, and I'd be jumping. And suddenly I heard, at this big tree, I could hear whispers. And I really, really was frightened. And it was only when I was past it I realised it was a curtain couple who were having a good laugh at me. Anyway, that was a glamorous world, and a world that I used to envy the boys and the Christian brothers in my class who lived in the town, because they could go outside their door and they had people to play with, whereas I was faced with fields and cattle and boring things like that, apart from Watson Park, where Vena and Ivy lived.
Well, you've written many books, of course. Did you use all those experiences when you were younger and meeting characters about the town? Did you bring them all into your books?
I certainly brought some in. There was a classmate of mine called Elementary Wharton.
It sounds like a boy I want to meet.
At the Christian Brothers. Well, the reason he was elementary, I figure, I'm not sure of this, the Beatles could correct me on this now, because there's some of my classmates here, but when we heard the name Wharton, it sounded like Watson. And then you see Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes, Elementary Wharton. But he was a wonderful guy. He's one of these people who made such an impact on me. He was a really gifted harmonica player, taught himself. He was also very fast at running, which was a great sort of thing to have then. You were running up and down the schoolyard. But he was a very gentle sort of a guy. And I remember we used to have little recorder groups. Brother Skehan taught us to play 4-part harmony in recorder groups. And I remember elementary wanting to join this group. You had to put down 2 and 6 or something as a deposit. Elementary got the 2 and 6. And I brought it up to the brother, and the brother said, "No, it's okay, it's okay. You go, so go off you go." He was from Brook Street. He was from a very severe poverty, much of which existed at the time, and the brother saw him as not respectable. Now, this actually was a brother who was a wonderful teacher in many respects, but I can still see the pain on that man's face, that boy's face. And I often think of him, and I included him in one of my stories in a slightly disguised form.
Do you still feel a very strong connection to Omagh and the people about here and the whole environment of the town?
I do. I say to people, well, people say to me, "Where are you from?" I say, Omagh, automatically, despite the fact I left it when I was about 12. I was a boarder in St. Colum's and Derry. But I say to people, when I cross towards Omagh, west of the Ban, and I look at the fields, and I look at the sheep in the fields, and I look at the cloud formations, I say to myself, that's the way clouds should look. That's the way fields should be. That's how sheep should look when they're in a field. It seems that's the real way. This is real. The other stuff about Belfast, east of the Ban, that's sort of second-hand, really.
Do you feel the same, Vena? Is this the real world here in Omagh?
Of course it is. I was born and bred in Omagh. I was away in Belfast, yes. I lived in Belfast for a few years and loved it. I did like Belfast, but Omagh is home, yeah.
And for you, Ivy?
Well, I never left Omagh, except for about 6 months when I worked in Belfast. But I've always went to school in Omagh, lived in Omagh, married a Dunquin man, but you may say Omagh.
We'll forgive him that.
Yeah, we will.
Ivy Turner, Vena Jamison, and Jude Collins, thank you all very, very much. I'm now delighted to see again a man that I did meet on the programme before. He very kindly invited me to his home. Let me tell you about his home. He's back at his home of his family, his roots family, up in the hills beyond Omagh. But what he did was he built an entire new house over the top of the original house, keeping all the original features inside. Fabulous, beautiful house, and good to see you again, Eamon.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you too, Colm.
One thing I didn't get talking to you the last time was about your basketball career, because you have brought from America basketball to Omagh, and you've set up a league among school children, the Omagh Thunder basketball teams, or what is the correct name? I'm saying it wrong.
It's the Omagh Thunder Community Basketball Club.
And what made you do this?
To be perfectly honest, it was a bit of boredom. I had came here and I was on the farm, and I was coming into the leisure center to play a little basketball, shoot 'em up, and I met another fellow who had he had the senior team here in Omagh that had, was in the league, but they were all adults. And then the more I played, I was paying to go to there to use that, and then I says, well, he says, you can start your own team and then we'll support it. So we started the youth club.
Now, can I say to you, you're American, obviously, you're
Yes.
back here from America, living in your family home, but when you get the image of a basketball player, you get this image of a tall 6'6" You're not quite that height. You're pretty small for a basketball
That's
player.
right. Well, there's quite a lot of understandings about basketball players. First of all, the man who handles the ball is called a point guard, and he is always the smallest player on the field. And it's just a matter of geometry. My hand's closer to the ground. The ball comes back to it quicker. I can turn faster and quicker than a big person. So the two smaller people on the team would be your point guards. So there is a need. Now, the big boys are needed for underneath the basket and getting the rebounds, and, they have a better shot. But the quicker players are a thing. But my basketball career was virtually ended when I was a sophomore in high school. I got cut from the team. But I played in primary school, but everyone in Philadelphia, it's very, very competitive. It's so easy because we lived in a poor neighborhood. There was 8 children in our family, and my father worked in a factory. So we would just hang a basketball rim out on a telephone pole, and that's where we'd play basketball. So everyone had it, and that's, if you notice, that's why a lot of the people in the inner cities, poor people, that was their way out. That was the sport that they could afford because it cost nothing. You could play it anywhere. You didn't need a field. So when I came over here, I always loved it because you could play by yourself with 2 people or 3 people. But coming here, I would say the greatest thing that we've done, we've won 6 Ulster championships, and there's nothing like beating the boys from Belfast. Because when they think they're playing us, as I was called, I had no idea what the word meant. These culchies coming in here. And I'm going, what is a culchie? And then I got sorted.
Well, you're a culchie
I'm
now.
a culchie myself. Now I know what it is. So that was a great thing. And I'm in 8 of the primary schools here in Omagh, and I have the greatest job in the world. I work for 1 hour a day, and the kids are happy to see me. I teach them basketball, and then I try and encourage them to come out to the station center. We train there during the week, and we started out with the senior team, and then I started the youth club. We have under 12, under 14, under 16, under 18, and we have girls on the under 12 as well.
And these are all interdenominational schools.
Yes, they are.
So it's a great bridge builder then, this basketball.
That's what I found out, and I'm good at it because I really don't represent either side of the community, and I don't care where you come from. I just care if you can put the ball in the basket, And the young people, that's all they care about too. And it's been a great experience for me, and I can't express how thankful I am, especially to the people of Omagh, how generous they are in the donations. And Nishi and Michael as well. They're a big supporter of the Omagh Thunder Basketball Club.
And what's your next big tournament or game? Or
I'm 70 years old now. I'm trying to retire, but they won't let me. So we couldn't be prouder. We have 2 boys now that are on the Irish team, the Norris Irish team that have gone to England and have gone to Belgium. They're playing. We have Oisin Carlin, who's played in America, and he's also played for teams in Germany. It's such a great sport for this country because you don't have to worry about the weather. People that would know the history, and I found out back in the early 60s, basketball was huge up in this part of the country and all over Ireland. And there's 7 high schools in Omagh, and all 7 of them have basketball facilities. But none of them have a team, sadly. But that my next step would be to try and get a basketball league within the secondary schools. And we had a tournament once, but that would be the ideal thing. But I need some guys a little shorter in the tooth than me to take this job on. So I'm looking for volunteers for help.
Eamon, Daly, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom Sweeney, good to see you again.
Hello, Colm. It's lovely to see you. I haven't seen you for a month.
But the last time you did see me, what you did say was, you have to come to Omagh and do a programme. And if you do, I'll come along and sing a song for you.
Well, I'm glad you came to Omagh. Most Omagh people are very proud of this place. When I was a young fellow with never a crack in my heart, I used to go touring. On my very first tour of America, I met an old neighbour of mine, very old man. He said to me, when you go to America, don't say you're from Omagh, or people will think you're boasting.
That's a
and
good.
I took him at his word.
I haven't heard that before. Now, the last time we talked, you told me about your grandmother, Sarah, collecting songs from all over Ireland, and indeed people coming from all around the world to hear her sing these songs.
That's right.
But you're now in Omagh. Would there be a wealth of material about this area?
There would have been a huge wealth of folk songs around here. A good friend of mine, a man called James Foley, he was a contemporary of mine at school. And James did a collection of folk songs called Harvest Home, Folk Songs of West Tyrone for the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. It was a book and a CD as well, a fabulous collection. Harvest Home by James Foley.
And you have a local song for us today.
I do. Well, it's a song all about Omagh anyway. I'm not sure who wrote this song, but I remember learning it from my grandmother as well. Not too much love lost between Omagh and Armagh, mind you, but she taught me this song anyway, all about Omagh. And it's called Sweet Omagh Town. Now from Ballyshannon to Sweet Dungannon, and from Cullyhanna to Old Ardbow, I have roamed and rambled, I've caroused and gambled, where songs did thunder and whiskey flowed. And blithe and airy, I've tramped through Derry and Portaferry in the county down. But with all my raking and my undertaking, my heart was aching for sweet Omagh Town. And when life grew dreary and I grew weary, I set sail for England from Derry Quay, and as when I landed, it was fate commanded that I to London should make my way. And many's the gay night, from dark to daylight, I spent with people of high renown. But with all their splendour and heaps to spend, sure, my mind would wander back to Omagh Town. Then further going, my wild oats sowing, to New York City I crossed the sea, where a congregation of rich relations stood on the harbour for to welcome me. In grand apparel, like dukes or earls, they tried to win me with the harp and crown. But with all their glamour and uproarious manner, my lips would stammer of sweet Omagh Town. And when life is over, and I shall hover above the gate where St. Peter stands, and he shall call me for to install me inside the gates of that golden land, and I shall answer, oh, I know is grand, sir, for to play the harp and to wear the crown. But I being humble, I will never grumble if heaven's as charming as Sweet Omagh Town.
Tom Sweeney and Sweet Omagh Town. Now, I said that we would be talking to some legends of the music business later in the programme. Well, that later point has come in the programme because I'm joined by three former members of one of the most famous show bands, not only to come from Omagh, but practically in the entire land of Ireland. They were one of the first show bands to appear on television, and they were renowned for their skills and their great music that they brought all over the place. They were called the Plattermen, of course. And from the Plattermen, we have Pat Chesters, Leo Doran, and Ray Moore, and the three of you are very welcome to the programme. I don't know where to start with you guys. Maybe I'll start with you, Pat, maybe. You were a saxophone player.
That's right.
But the skills on the saxophone weren't learned in the show bands.
No.
Were you involved in bands before that, brass bands? Or?
Well, we had a band in Omagh called St. Eugene's Brass and Reed Band, and the three of us were in it. And it was the foundation place for some of the Melody Aces were in it, some of the Polka Dots were in it. Many of the bands that played in the Omagh area would have been taught their instruments in St. Eugene's.
Now, I was told that some of the bands, those brass bands, used to practice in this very
That's
hall.
very Labour Hall. That's
the Labour Hall.
This was St. Eugene's Brass Band.
With a tin roof, I believe.
And the youngsters up the hill pelted it with stones.
And I believe one of those youngsters was Brian Call. We'll say nothing about that.
We'll say nothing about that, that's right.
But Pat, you were in the Plattermen in the golden days when Brian Call was there, when Rob Strong was there, Simon Scott was there. You played all through those years with them.
I actually was the manager of the band for the first year, the band. The band was started way back with a fellow called Brenton O'Donnell, but Brenton packed it in very early because he wanted to train as an accountant, and I took over the management of the band. So I played and managed the band for the first couple of years.
The show band scene at that time, people have a sort of a glamorous memories of it, but it was far from glamorous. Piling into an old coil van and travelling the length and breadth of Ireland, all times of the middle of the night. What's your memories of it?
Well, when we started off, we used to pay a guy a shilling a while. The first bandwagon actually was a black taxi. Then we paid a chap who used to get a shilling a mile. He ran us for a couple of years. And then we eventually bought our own van. And then we eventually ended up with one of the Wright bus. Wrights built us a big van.
I remember that van very well, with the Plattermen emblazoned along the side of it. But Pat, there's something else I want to talk to you about as well as the Plattermen, because I'll be talking to the two boys about the Plattermen as well. You went on to play with the Royal Show Band in Las Vegas, along with Brenton Boyer. That was a mighty gig, that. How did you get that?
Plattermen was coming to an end, unfortunately, because Rob Strong had moved to Dublin, and there was met up with Dublin lads who were playing the band, Noel Bridgman, a drummer, a couple of boys like that there, and there was just a split coming, and Ray also left at the same time. He joined Paddy Cole's band. Leo had retired because he took over his father's business, and so I met Brenton Boyer one day just at a tea break in the bus where we were travelling somewhere, and Brenton told me that his band, the Big Eight, had split up, and that Paddy Cole had left, and would I take over the sax? So I played sax over there in Las Vegas for a couple of years.
Tell me about that scene. It must have been great.
Ifs and buts. It was a totally different scene. It wasn't a good family scene for me. The first year I went, I wasn't able to take my wife, so I was away 6 months from home. The second time around, I was able to bring the wife out the second time. Then they started that they were going to, but it was coming to the stage where the band was going to live in Las Vegas all the time. You would have started then into taking your children. My boys were quite grown up. I have 4 sons, and they were quite grown up, so it meant shifting from school, putting them into school in Las Vegas, take them home again for the 6 months, 6 months back, 6 months forward, that kind of thing. And I didn't want to be part of that.
So you retired home. Did you miss it though?
It was great from the point of view that one night I had the pleasure of meeting Frank Sinatra. Sinatra was brought into see our lead singer, not Brendan, by the way, another singer called Dave Cody, who was the trumpet player as well. But one of the Stardust bosses thought that Davey was a great singer. Dave done what you would call maybe the straight songs, whereas Brendan done the Elvis, the Irish, and Davey would have done She and My Way and that kind of thing on the stage. So one of the Stardust bosses thought that Davey was actually a great singer, and he persuaded Sinatra to come in and listen to Davey. And then we were all taken down to meet Sinatra afterwards, and we were introduced to him one by one. It was nearly like genuflecting to the Pope, to be quite truthful, you know. But Telly Savalas was with him, Kojak, and Kojak sort of knew this kind of thing, that Frank was being sort of adored, you know, and he said to me, he whispered in my ear, "Come on, Paddy, let's get a drink." So I went off and got drunk with Kojak.
Very good. Very good. Leo Doran, you also played in the Platterman.
I started off very, very small in St. Eugene's band with the boys here, and I left school 14, started to serve my time with my father. I had a barber shop in Omagh down in Market Street. And that was when I was born, I was supposed to be going to be a barber, and no matter how it went.
Well, you did become a barber.
I became a barber, and then from that, then transferred up to St. Eugene's band, and then history from that on. We all started to play together in a small band, then became better year by year. And the band got bigger, more popular, and when I left the band, then I went back into the barber shop again.
Well, did you enjoy the band life?
I loved the band, yeah.
Well, why did you go back into the barber shop then?
Both parents had died. My father had the business, which I had been in before. My family was getting bigger, and I thought it was better to leave the band altogether and get on with my life the way it was. I loved every minute of the band. We all met our wives as part of the people who just came to dance halls. That's the way it happened. So.
Well, you went back into the family business. You became a barber. Yeah. A barber shop's a place where you must meet great characters and hear great stories.
It's a stage for people. People, especially around country areas, there's men who have been in shops and farms and never spoke to anybody maybe for the next time they went to the haircut.
So tell me some of the stories you would have heard there.
There's one local man, a man called, it was McCullough, Dan McCullough. I used to have a very busy end of Saturday, so I employed this other barber to come and help out on a Saturday. He was a very, very fast barber. Very quick, speedy man, you know. So this day, Dan McCullough was sitting behind the waiting, and I finished my man, and I just called the next customer, and Dan got on my chair, right? And he leaned back to me, and he says, "I'm glad I got you today." And I says, what do you mean, Dad? Well, he says, "See the other man here?" He says, "I got him the last time on here." And he says, "He had my hair cut before I got my bloody cap off." He says, that's the sort of man he was, you know. But those type of things, I mean, it's an experience you never forget. People would just tell you their aches and pains and their troubles and their trials. You're sort of you're a listener, you know.
There's something I want to talk to you about, Leo. Very serious subject. Your shop was right on the high street.
Oh, yes.
And on the day of the Omagh bomb, you had what could only be described as a miraculous escape because...
That's the only word could describe it, yeah.
You closed that day for some reason.
I had a daughter, one of my daughters was getting married, and she had arranged her wedding with a priest, I'll not mention anybody's name, but they arranged the 15th of August, right? So cut a long story short, about 3 months later, we had another function, and there was a priest there at the function, and he was talking to my wife, and he was saying, "Is any more big events coming up in your house?" And she said, "Well, I have a daughter getting married now shortly." And he says, "Oh, God, that's good." He says, "When is it?" And I'll send her a telegram. So she says, "The 15th of August." And he says, "Oh, no, I doubt not. If there's that, it's a holiday of obligation. They don't have weddings because there's masses on all day." So when we got home, he says, "Check this out." So when we got back to our own house, I was standing beside her in the hall. She rang the priest and was saying to him, "That date, is that okay, Father?" And you could hear the gasp at the far end, and he says, "Oh, no. He says, "I forgot all about that. What are we going to do?" Well, she says, I'm up and running here. I've got things organised and that." He says, "Leave it with me." He came back an hour later. He went to see Bishop Daly in Derry, and because it was his fault, he changed the date from the Omagh. Well, if he hadn't, he said, "No, you'll have to go on with it." I would have had the shop open that day, and I'd have had maybe 10 customers on that day on a Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock, when we were at her wedding.
How close was the bomb to your shop?
See that window? See a dartboard there behind you? The car was parked directly opposite it was my home, it was my house. I was born and reared in.
And was your house wrecked?
Oh, I was on the missing list. People thought I was in the shop.
But you were at your daughter's wedding?
At my daughter's. And two people were standing outside my door. One was Libby Rush, which is a shop next door, a wee cafe. Another fellow called Sean McGrath. They both died at the scene.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Not at all. No.
Thank you.
It's 19 years now, so it's a lot easier now.
Ray Moore, can I come to you?
Yeah.
We'll talk again about music, because you've been a stalwart of music in this town. Your whole family was involved in music in this town for many, many years, and you were also in the Plantermen.
I know nothing else.
Tell me about your family history. Was your father involved in music?
My father loved music. He just lived every day for music. And all he wanted was to have his children be able to play, and he taught all the kids to play Irish traditional music. And they had a band going, the Moore family band. And I had the pleasure in 1966 of representing Doran at the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin. And it's funny, I came across the programme for it there recently, and there was the Moore family in the programme.
So this would have been traditional type music they would have been playing?
Yeah, but I wasn't in the band. I was already playing in the show band then.
How did you start the show band?
Brenton O'Donnell, that Pat mentioned there a while ago. Brenton asked me, he said, "Do you want to play in my band?"
What did you play?
He played accordion. But he said, "Do you want to play in my band?" I said, "I want to play." Trumpet, he says.
Had you played trumpet before?
Oh yeah, I'd been in St Eugene's. And I'd been around all the instruments in St Eugene's. I'd been around all the brass instruments. So that was it. Come down to his house on a Sunday afternoon. Started me off.
From me, Colm Arbuckle, and all my guests, it's goodbye, and we leave you with the very capable Knotty Pines.
Many's a gay night from dark till daylight I spend with people of high renown. But in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for Sweet Omagh Town.